Today on the Black Zeitgeist, we assess the French president's statement on justified anti French sentiment, the crimes against humanity, and the solution for Africa moving forward. Welcome to the future. The Black Zeitgeist has arrived. This is the Black Zeitgeist, the youthful voice for the future people of African descent on the continent and in the diaspora. So today we'll be talking about President Macron, his statements, as mentioned, and what that means for us going forward in the future for the people of African descent. So first of all, he talked recently about the attack that had taken place in the Niger after 71 soldiers were killed by Islamic militants, and 13 of which were French soldiers. So his statement basically was brought on by this tragedy, unfortunately, and tragedy for this African country. And as a result of this statement, as a result of this action, he mentioned that he expects West African leaders to make it clear that they want and need France's military help, despite the anti-French sentiment expressed by some protesters. Now notice this is the New York Times I'm reading from. It says, and I'll link this in the description, but it says by some protesters. Now, there's a lot of protesters. It's not some. I would say it's the majority. So yes, I would say that it is definitely the majority. When I say the majority, I don't mean just people in the on the continent or in the diaspora, but everyone of African descent are starting to realize. People are starting to realize how France has been a beast as a colonial power, and a beast long after they apparently ended their colonial rule over West African countries, which we know, and I put that in air quotes if you can't see my fingers, ended, which we know that has not happened, and didn't happen in the past, and has certainly not happened just yet. So France still controls a variety of different West African countries fiscally. They still control them politically, and unfortunately, they're committing crimes, yes, crimes against humanity. These are crimes against humanity with what's going on in Africa and West Africa specifically, and I'll explain why. First of all, hundreds of thousands of West African and African immigrants are dying on their trips to Europe to seek greener pastures. Millions within these West African countries are dying in poverty. Millions are dying in poverty as a result of these countries' economies. So it's important for all of us to understand what's happening and what is France's role within these countries. We already know that France, right now, they have the CFA, the franc, right? The CFA is the West African note that is held in Benin, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Mali, Togo, Niger, Senegal, and Guinea-Bissau. Then there's the Central African franc, which is held by Cameroon, Gabon, Chad, Central African Republic, the DRC, and Equatorial Guinea. Now, in case you don't know, France prints the CFA notes and coins, meaning that these countries, their monetary notes are printed in a different continent. Let that sink in.
their money, what they use to survive, are printed in a different continent within France. The exchange rates and the amounts in circulation are determined by the French finance minister, to be exact. It is pegged to the euro, right? And these countries must deposit 50% of their reserves in the French central bank. Now, this is estimated to be about $20 billion yearly. Not only that, but all of these deposits are placed on negative interests, meaning that the money that they are storing in the French central bank has interest placed on it. So they're paying to store their money in these French central banks. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is absolutely devastating to the economy, and this is something that unfortunately most people don't know, but more people are starting to find out, and there needs to be pressure that needs to be placed on France, because as a result of this, going back to my previous points, hundreds of thousands are dying in their trips to Europe. Why are they taking trips to Europe? Because economically their countries are destitute. They're in poverty. Millions are dying in poverty. Their countries are not able to sustain themselves because they, unfortunately, have to place 50% of their reserves in a different continent. How is it that the United Nations does not say anything of this? You even had the Spain's prime minister or president, I believe it's prime minister, call out French's Macron, stating that what they are doing to African people in African countries is a result of why Spain has so many immigrants coming to their countries, and he called them out on it. And unfortunately, we're not calling them out enough. African people, we need to realize that we are the majority of this planet. If we are able to speak with one voice, it is impossible for the world to not hear us. Our problem is that we don't do that, and we don't see each other's issues. We don't see each other's issues, and we don't speak up about them. We need to do it, and we don't just need to do it in the comment section. We need to do it in proper ways, not just comment sections of this post, of this video, or comment sections of another person's YouTuber's video. No, we need to be on different platforms. We need to be in comment sections of articles. We need to be on Twitter. We need to be in comment sections of all of these different. We need to from Facebook to Twitter to every single social media site that is public. We need to make sure that we organizations such as the United Nations, the World Bank, all of us in unison at the same time. We need to start having organized actions. Because if we as a people start to become more organized, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish. So I just say this to say that, yes, these are crimes against humanity that France is committing, but what are the solutions? I believe that the first solution should be that France, they need to remove their military presence from Africa immediately. France is not, and their actions have proven that they are not in the best interest of Africa. So henceforth, they need to remove themselves from Africa on the continent, period. Until otherwise noted by the people on whether or not they trust France enough to have their military presence within their country's borders. Second solution, I believe, is that they need to return the CFA reserves back to these African countries, and not just over a 10-year span or a 5-year span. No, they need to do it immediately. Within 2020, these are solutions. This is the future Our channel focuses on the future and future solutions for people of African descent globally. And the first solution that we need is that within the year 2020, the CFA reserves from these African countries need to be returned to these African countries. And the first thing we need to do is pressure the World Bank and the United Nations and the US and every organization in the world that is global, put pressure on them to put pressure on France. Because honestly, this is a humanitarian crisis. These are crimes against humanity that a state is committing against African states. Lastly, they need to dissolve the Pact for African Colonization, which is the pact that encapsulates this CFA deal and unfortunately has resulted in African countries not being able to sustain themselves economically and economically thrive for themselves for the future and for their people. These are the solutions that I pose, and we'll be talking about this more over the course of the next few weeks and months. But I am noticing that these are our people. We are starting to get more focused. We need to continue to do so. We need to continue to act. We need to continue to act. We need to continue to act. This has been the future youthful voice for the people of African descent on the continent and in the diaspora, the Black Zeitgeist. Tune in next time. Until then, take care.
Keep it on the level. Keep it on